Hi there. Nice to be here, and thanks to Dave Robbins and Intrepid Control Systems, ARPON, for having this group here and having me. I won't talk much about me because that's not that important, just simply that I've been around the ADAS world since 2001. I was working for Valeo at the time. I spent a lot of years at Valeo, and I was at the headquarters in Paris, and my German boss pulled me aside in the hall one day and said, we were working in the sensor system, ultrasonics, only at that time, the world's leader in ultrasonics. And he said, hey, Cooper, you're the American guy. I want you to go to California next week. I said, sure, but what are we doing in California? 2001. Well, we need a license for image processing software. I said, image processing software? We're going to put cameras on cars? And that was 2001. So I was part of the team that put together the first lane departure warning camera on a production vehicle in the United States and in Europe in 2004. And so I'm one of the old men of driving assistance, not just the gray hair. I've been around it for a while. I've been in and out of it a bit the last few years, so there's a few gaps in it. But for the last few months, I've come to work with this very, very sharp team whose work I've admired for 5 years since it started up, a team called VSI Labs. And I just happened to have a piece of the thing that just amazed me the most. We could never keep track of all the companies. Even when there was a small number of companies, had a hard time keeping track of who was doing what were their products. Today, it's insane. It's insane. We only follow we only consider 54 LiDAR companies. There are much more than that, as you know. And so we have this database that allows us, this portal that allows us to go inside and begin to drill deeply. So I just picked FLIR, for example. You start digging in here, and then you can go in and blah, blah, blah. So you can sort by products, functions, etc. And I literally had this running, this portal, subscription service running at CES when I'd see a company and say, damn, another LiDAR company? Who were they? And I thought I knew most of them, and I used to. Can't keep track of them now. I'd call it up and literally say, oh, that's who they are. They started this. They got this much thing. They're from this country. Oh, and they're working with such and such OEM, or they're hoping to. Cool, good. I could ask them 2 or 3 questions. I could be on my way. Wonderful, wonderful piece to save time and allow you to focus your energy. So let me just get into the presentation here. Here we go. This one here and here. Okay, so VSI Labs is a technology research company where we research what's happening in the connected automated vehicle space. And so we not only gather information from customers from the internet especially, but we do automotive builds. So call it demonstration as a service. We have put together, and I could bother to show it to you later if anybody's interested, a real simple automated, flexible architecture that allows sensors and different pieces to be plugged in and out so we can run in automated versions. And with active radar, a FLIR IR camera, with an RGB camera from whomever, and we put together a lot of Linux open source and developed some things ourselves to do fusion and allowing us to get information. So when someone says, oh, I got the best such and such a thing, we'd say, let's check it out, let's see it. And this way, when we put together our database, we're not just sitting around being desk jockeys, we actually do know what we're talking about. So Phil Magny's been around in the data information business for years. And when I saw him back in 2015, I said, oh, Phil, I would have given my right arm to have a database like this when I was at IAV Automotive Engineering, or I was back in Valeo in the ADAS world. So I'm an American guy, obviously, but I spent 30 years working for German and French tier 1s. And 10 years of it on the other side of the ocean and 3 years of it in Asia. So So like I said, we do this kind of work. It's applied research, and that's what I really like about it. In a way, we're media analysts. That's how we got my tag for CES at media analyst. That was really cool for once, instead of just being a supplier or whatever. So our job is to be objective, but at the same time, we sell slots on demo cars for suppliers who want to say, hey, I got this really good LiDAR, but I don't know how to make it work with the camera and the radar and fuse them together. Can you put it on your car? Yeah, we can make it work. Boom, when you want demos, and we take it around to the big shows, okay? So, and like I showed you a little bit of the research portal, you can get into our database and look around and find out literally. It's just so amazing. We used to be sitting in an engineering meeting, and the vice president would be there, and he'd say, oh, I ran into somebody from company X, and they got this going. And you don't have your data ready to say, oh, yeah, boss, but it's not just company X, company Y, and company Z. A, B, and C are doing that as well. And your boss is off going in a direction. I would have loved to have a database to say, oh, yeah, boss, let me just show you. There's a lot of companies doing this, and the one that you met at your country club isn't necessarily the one that's the leader. So anyway, CES 2020. Very interesting time. I've been around now this was my 6th CES. 4 of them I was doing demos of highly automated vehicles on site with Valeo and with IAB. It's very interesting because we were able to see firsthand when the media comes, oh yes, and then the tech groupies come, yes, 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 and the investors come, and they all want to know, it's going to happen tomorrow, right? And we kept saying, guys, we're engineers, okay? If you want to feed your own little circle inside and say, yes, yes, in 2013, they're promising that by 2017, we're going to have this, and by 19, time out, guys. So for me personally, it's reassuring to see that the industry has, all right, 99% isn't good enough. Even if we were there, you need 99.99, lots of nines going out there. All right, so what do we see? L2, L3 vehicles. I hesitate to use the term L3. I don't personally like that because the L3 specifically traditionally has meant in the SAA terms that you're relying on the driver to be the backup. And a lot of us believe that L3, as it's been traditionally defined, will never take place because drivers can never be depended upon to be the backup. Well, gee, is it going to be a half-second response time or 10 seconds, or if the guy's asleep 30 seconds, et cetera? But we're hearing this term, L2, L2 plus, et cetera, and we're seeing L3s. We'll talk about that. Basically, it's some of the L2s, and they're putting the LiDARs on it, and maybe the OEMs might refer to it as sort of an L3 vehicle without actually promising it. But in any case, the line is drawn for me. Real simple. If you kill somebody with the car, are you going to the jail, or is the OEM in trouble? Either you're on one side of the line or you're on the other side of the line. Kind of like it is with a manual and automatic transmission. You drive one way, you drive the other way. So, and we've seen some new tier 1 strategies. We see the LiDAR people and neural network accelerators, which are interesting. People trying to get the jump on our friends at NVIDIA and positioning technologies in HD maps. I'm trying not to go too long here. So what do we see? We're calling it L3 plus passenger vehicles. My colleagues put this presentation together, and I might have called it L2 plus plus, but in any case, this is what we're seeing. So start of sales, SOS 2020, Mercedes-Benz should have the new Valeo Scala 2, which is was based on, of course, the Scala 1, originally eBay technology. We're expecting that in the first half of this year. The BMW L3 Magna is supposed to be coming up with next year using Innoviz LiDAR technology. We hear Honda, we're piecing together different things. Honda should have a Valeo Scala 2 on it later in the year. And we're hearing stories about a German consortium, different car companies coming together. We won't mention any names, but again, looking at further on Valeo Scala 3, all right? We're looking at, we're hearing about Eva, which is going on a Audi, they say L4, whether it comes about, it all depends. And we're even seeing Continental supposed to talk about a solid state short range LiDAR going on. Please have a seat here, folks. Have a seat, okay? So we're seeing a lot of this. I think overall, compared to the previous year, what we saw a lot was robotaxi. Yeah, robotaxi. 360 LiDAR. Yes, yes, yes. Well, I think the tier ones are coming to the conclusion, and I agree with them, is to say the sensor suite is so expensive for those that until you can sell a lot of them, you're not going to get your return on investment. And therefore, we better sell as much as we can down in the L2 plus area, as much as we can. So we still have a ton of LiDAR companies there. Talk about that in a bit. I was surprised to see this myself. So we talked about this. Okay, legality of L3. Well, whether they're actually going to be functioning legally as an L3, that is automated in certain restricted ODDs, but depending on fallback from the driver, the question will be, in any case, you're the driver, you're responsible. You kill somebody, the car kills somebody, you're responsible. Not the OEM, you are. And to me, that's, sorry, call me a real simple guy. It's going to come down to that one way or the other, right? So like I said, L2, L2 plus. I don't know. If I were the legal advisors for the OEMs, I would make dang sure that they didn't do something like Elon Musk did, promising autopilot to be able, implying autopilot to be able to do something that is not even legal. But there is something going on now. UNECE, for those of you who don't know, is a committee for the United Nations that works on transit regulations globally. They're not applied here in the United States. So we use FMVSS, but the UNECE is a default committee application for regulations that are used elsewhere in the world. And they are close to coming up with functional requirements for automated and autonomous vehicles. There are those who say the L3 will include that, will be included in there, but we'll just have if the driver can't take over, then the car will pull off to the side. Okay, maybe, good. Then I don't really call that L3. I call it an L2 backup, but all right. So we're expecting something next month from this UN regulation where they will lay out automated lane keeping system, ALKS. All right. So, but in any case, it seems that LiDAR has been seen to be the obvious building block for L3 systems, which will give, I'm calling it L3 in quotation marks, okay? Because I don't like that term, and I don't know if we can, because it's not legal to run L3, but people are using this term, okay? So there were some other wild ideas here. Some of you might have heard about this. Toyota presented their concept of a woven city, a fully automated city at the base of Mount Fuji. They're going really far, etc. Cool. Hyundai went even further, and they had known as Bell, to see Hyundai working with Uber as an approach, I thought was pretty interesting. The real benefit of this is when you make these small and you don't need a pilot and you have a limited ODD going from, I don't know, Manhattan to Kennedy Airport, back and forth, a couple hundred of these things, you can recharge, you can slide batteries on and off. You're in a different way. I thought it was interesting. It's certainly not for tomorrow, but electrification, I think, will have a really big effect in small, short-range aircraft. But we're not here talking about that today. The other things that came up, we're not going to talk much about EVs, but some of the things we saw, Byton showed their M-Byte. This Fisker Ocean is supposed to be under a $30,000 electric vehicle. Nissan Ariya didn't get into much details, but it had some nice ADAS attachments to it. Mercedes-Benz Vision. BMW pushed their i3 Urban Suite, what it would look like inside a automated vehicle, and of course, Ford Mach-E. So there were some interesting things there, but we're going to focus more on the various suppliers here. Okay? So, sorry. Seems to be vehicles, it's our option. If anybody's got different opinions here, I'm happy to talk to you afterwards. We gather information from public sources. Nothing we say is confidential, all right? And what we've seen is that the ZF is working with a major Asian automaker for a full level 2 system for less than $1,000 a vehicle, all right? Which is pretty impressive. ZF will also provide a major truck OEM with L4 systems by 24, 25. And they're also working with Mobile IQ and ZF's Gen 21 medium range radar. And there's some interesting things. ZF's got a Pro Eye radar. So we're getting to the point where more sophisticated LiDAR, second, third, fourth generations, and then high resolution radar, and then we'll talk about this a bit later, Mobileye with their VIDAR, a vision-based device where they're going to be generating point clouds in the way that radar and LiDAR do, but doing it strictly from vision systems. So there's some interesting stuff going on. No prejudices towards my former employer and longtime connection, but Valeo did a lot of real interesting things this year. And they've had some really big design wins on the LiDAR side, as I mentioned before. They've got some startup productions that are pretty impressive. And their strong camera portfolio has been adopted by Waymo. So it's their first camera installation. The Chevy Silverado with the rear camera that blots out the trailer. I don't know if any of you have seen that. Most Americans, we love that because we're used to towing around big things with pickup trucks. Not as big a draw in the rest of the world, but it's something that's a pretty impressive piece of image processing. They did some good stuff out there with this one here, for example. The 48-volt no-person automated delivery vehicle, low speed, working with a Chinese company. And they've also come up with some, and they're not the only ones, some high-precision positioning using a number of different devices with some of the telematics people, corrections, etc. And it looks like that, you know, we've always known that knowing plus or minus 10 meters isn't good enough. We need a plus or minus a few centimeters to locate you in the lane. They've done some good stuff, and they did a nice showcase in the Hyundai Sonata, a nice demo with Sonata. Aptiv, we look at them as one of the only companies that's still really looking at the full stack of software for robotaxi development. It's an ambitious thing. Most of us are of the opinion that any tier one trying to do a complete stack is biting off more than they can chew. Not everybody agrees with us, but Aptiv is still working on it, and they had a lot of things running out back and forth to the airport. It's just that the technical challenges and the financial challenges of handling the giant stack needed for autonomous driving, connected autonomous driving, is really, really a lot. So what we're seeing is customers are, tier ones are finally saying, okay, look, I need A through Z. I've got the first 6 letters of the alphabet. I'll buy the next 2 from you, and you got a good one here. We begin to mix and match. But really, will an OEM buy a complete stack from a tier one? The strong OEMs will not. The weak OEMs probably won't have the money to do it anyway. The jury's still out on this. Okay? Oops. I'm just going to get to here. What else? So ZF. That's some interesting stuff. Valeo, Aptiv, Elmei. Continental seems to be working on a pretty conservative. They've got some working demos. Oh, something interesting. Sony, this is the Sony picture. Sony put together a car, and they said, oh, it's not a concept car. They said it's a prototype. And basically, if you look at it, it was pretty well done. But their approach was, what's going to be in it? We don't know. It's going to be software just like your phone. And but when Sony puts their muscle behind something, you got to take them seriously. You got to take them seriously. So it was interesting. They were in the hall with all of the electronic consumer goods, and they had this giant thing. So okay, cool. Now, chipset companies. What do we see from here? Of course, there's the Mobileye, the Intel Mobileye. But before we get to that, interesting, NVIDIA, which has been the dominant player for so long, for the first time, they didn't have a keynote address. In all the years they've been coming to CES, they didn't have a keynote address. And they decided, for whatever reason, to use their GTC. I don't know if you know, NVIDIA does this once a year, GTC, and the thing explains. It's their their own trade show. And thousands of people come from all over the world. GTC is in Silicon Valley. Sorry? Thank you. And it's just GTC at the end of March in Silicon Valley, and they did one in China in December. So NVIDIA did more of that in China, and they didn't bring any new OEM partnership like they did with Daimler the previous year. So one of the biggest news was that it was providing access to pre-trained artificial intelligence models and training codes to key partner AV developers so that they could retrain their own algorithms. So as far as Intel Mobileye, their supremacy, longtime dominance of the markets, they claim, and they're probably right, that 70% of intelligent cameras on the market today are Mobileye's, all right? But of course, we all know that in the automotive industry, no OEM is happy with without having some choice and having a supplier that's too strong. So Mobileye went a long way to explain in their presentations, without showing too much, that they have a lot of redundancy in their perception systems, and that their computer vision engines they've always been a black box. You'd buy the Mobileye chip and you couldn't see what's inside, but it worked well. So everybody was happy, except purchasing wasn't happy, and nobody likes to have them pushed that way. So Mobileye was trying to show that they do have some dynamic neural nets, and they give the impression that they are transparent, although a lot of us are pretty skeptical about that. So the key messages from Mobileye were redundancy in the computer vision system, both for detection measurements and their object detection engines using 6 different engines: LiDAR, they have another thing called wheels, top view PS, pixel level, scene segmentation, 3D, full image detection. And what they've been working for is a subsystem to take their 2D camera image and put it into a 3D process measurement. And I mentioned the VIDAR, which is really, Google that, take a look at what their CTO did at his press conference. It's interesting. So, of course, they're dominant player, and they still believe that by 2025, they will have an L3, 4, or 5 passenger cars with a complete system for under $5,000, and that it will go on through the robotaxi mobility as a service. Remains to be seen, but they say they're going to have this robotaxi in 2 years, 2022. Okay? Keep going here. Qualcomm. Qualcomm is trying to put together their own stack. They hadn't really done it before. They were just focusing more on the hardware. They're really coming after NVIDIA and the Intel Mobileye players. Their Snapdragon Ride platform, they're really trying to go at it. They're working for a bandwidth of 700 tops, the tera operations per second, and a self-driving platform, and they claim it doesn't need any external cooling. It doesn't need any active cooling. It just works with passive cooling. So, or at least doesn't need liquid. These are supposed to be used for GM. Some of you guys at GM may know and can't tell me. That's fine. I don't want anything here. But what we saw was that there are 3 companies that are building processor IPs, and specifically for inferencing neural networks in the vehicle. So AI Motive, Texas Instruments, and Horizon Robotics. And so we see a post-GPU era where NVIDIA's dominance is diluted and GPU inferencing in the vehicle is replaced with these neural network accelerators. This is what we think, okay? Okay. So, LiDARs. After what I saw in 2019, I thought for sure, oh my gosh, there are 65 LiDAR companies, half of them be gone next year. Wasn't true. There was more this year. There was more. So I look at it and say, okay, guys, they're going to have to drop off sooner or later. We're never going to have more than 6 or 7 or 10 LiDAR companies at most. But the drop-off hasn't happened yet. So one of the things we're keeping an eye on, we're following 54 of them now that deserve a logo, but I think we have 85 or something on our radar screen, is we expect a lot of them to disappear. But even those that aren't, what you're seeing is they're working in other areas where applying their LiDAR to flying drones, applying LiDAR to surveillance, security, so they can get some cash flow and not die. All right? But it's a fascinating world out there, and there's other kinds of stuff going on. For example, ultra-wide, high-resolution, short-range LiDAR, filling the gap. Frequency modulated continuous wave LiDAR is something that can give you the instantaneous speed just using the good old Doppler effect like has been used in radar for years, but you can do it with LiDAR. Amazing. Luminar has come at it and said, well, we're going to do perception as a service, which is kind of strange. People haven't been able to sell many LiDAR. So what they're trying to say is, our product is really, really good, and you're going to need it for your robo-taxi, but we know it's expensive. So why don't you pay for us as a service, and we'll continually upgrade it for you as you go along, which is an interesting business model. AI, interesting company. They they have LiDAR, and they're able to focus the LiDAR on certain regions of interest, the ROI. So they'll, look at the whole thing and get a gazillion points, too much to handle. But if you say, oh, up in this upper left-hand corner, there's something there, let's keep an eye on it. Zoom, you can focus things there, get higher resolution. So they have some real nice IP. I personally was pretty impressed with what I saw there. Here, did I just? Okay. A few other things. Another one of these high-res radars, but everybody's coming out with different aspects of it. There's this company, Echodyne, again, doing the same sort of thing, using the radar, but when it gets an area of interest, focuses in on one thing. We've got something similar with this thing called Prophecy, event-based vision system. And thermal cameras were all over the place. And thermal cameras, I think, have a real good future. There was an interesting report in 2019 from IHS showing that the AEBs weren't working very well. They passed the test, but gee, the moment you had any kind of rain or darkness or light or glare, they had difficulties. So what we're seeing more and more is the automatic emergency braking being equipped with thermal cameras, which are wonderful at picking out pedestrians. We actually did testing for FLIR, one of our customers, that is really good with infrared cameras, but they don't know anything about the rest of the vehicle and how to integrate it. So we did some testing for them out at the American Center for Mobility in Ypsilanti, and we integrated their IR camera into a sensor fusion for an AEB algorithm, and we're able to get a very impressive improvement with a heated mannequin who's and there's a business niche, huh? Let's see, we're going to have to calibrate heated mannequins with 98.6 body temperature, et cetera, but it's a real nice thing. Sorry, did you have a question?
Kind of a comment. Probably a week or two ago, when the New Times there was an article about this very thing, about the automatic emergency braking, not being able to recognize pedestrians.
See, they've been designed especially for not hitting other cars. And it's really hard to pick out, especially last minute, 2-3 meters in front of your bumper, when do you stop? And Double E Times is really, I've been plugged into that seriously the last year. I really like their articles. Junko Yoshida, she interviews Phil all the time. They're good buddies, but I knew her before I knew Phil. And she is one of the best writers on automotive technology that I see anywhere. She's a great writer, and English isn't even her first language. Amazing. This wonderful Japanese woman. So, okay, what else? Echodyne. HD maps. So, here is, what a great name. Here started off as a consortium of 3 German OEMs, and now it's been bought into by, my gosh, I wish I had it handy with me. I think Honda's purchased into it. Mitsubishi just bought a big chunk of it in December, and but Mitsubishi Corp, you literally need the software to keep track of these things. But what they're able to do is bring some of their GNSS, which is like GPS, it's the more generic term for those of you who haven't heard it, work out detailed lanes and last mile. And so we think this is really important because you can, under snow-covered conditions, any other conditions, you have to know where the lines are, where the lanes are. Okay? TomTom seemed to be comfortable revealing its first HD map OEM design, and the localization will be used for the OEM's relative applications. They did not name the company, but we assume that it's with the time as TomTom. So, we don't share. There's our friends at Mobileye who have done their famous REM, which is they tried to not tell too much about it in their press conferences, but it means they're gathering map data from existing vehicles, and like it says here, gathering 6 million kilometers a day from serial production vehicles and harvesting data. And so it's a fantastically interesting approach as to how to gather real time and update your maps on a real basis. Yeah.
So who is the customer the one paying for the cell connection that you need to get that data from the vehicle?
Well, that's a good question. I honestly I have to look it up, but they're not taking up that much data. So it is a lot, but what you'd want to do is compare it with what's been downloaded and only upload differences, delta differences, okay? So right off the bat, I can't tell you that, but it's always the point. It's how much you're going to upload and how much you aren't.
I'm the customer in the car paying cell bill.
No, you're right. You cannot upload too much. And there's another company called Carmera here, which has been known for its semi-automated change detection. So it's really interesting. Carmera mounts inexpensive camera sensors inside fleet vehicles. And then it gives the fleet free video telematics. Look, let us put these cameras in your vehicles, and you can have access to what your guys are doing in case of accidents. You got it. But in the meantime, they at Carmera are getting the data from the cameras, and they're able to improve the quality of their maps on a minute-by-minute basis, not instead of hour by hour. Okay? So overall, as I mentioned, takeaways from CES 2020, we've seen the L2, L3, and I'll put the quotation marks around L3, new tier 1 strategies, LiDARs, neural network accelerators, and positioning technologies. Now, I was going to end here, but there's been some real interesting discussion on LinkedIn this week, and it had to do with the Nikkei Asian Review article that was translated in other things and came out and said, teardown of the Tesla Model 3 shows them 6 years ahead of Volkswagen and Toyota. That was the headline. Some of you saw that headline article? Of course, we at VSI Labs, we love this kind of philosophical stuff, and I'm always wary of someone coming to that kind of conclusion. So I was skeptical. We went into it, and they didn't say that it was a guy from Toyota, but it was kind of implied that an engineer from Toyota, when they tore apart the domain controller, what do they call it, hardware 3 for the Tesla Model Y, that he said, and I'm sure they translated it from Japanese, so there's cultural context that doesn't go with it. We cannot do it. All right, hang on a second, guys. Okay, all right, so this is it here. Hang on here. Yeah, so it says, 6 years ahead, and this was the headline, Tesla's 6 years ahead. And all of us have great respect for what Tesla has done, and there is a one stunned engineer declared, we cannot do it. So anyone takes a look at this. So this came out, and I said, time out, hang on a second. There's cultural things at work here. There's a lot of things. Tesla started from a clean sheet of paper. And as we debated this, somebody that I'm now connected with on LinkedIn came up with an article that I recommend you read. It's a guy who works at Samsung. He's an English guy, a German guy, and Bjorn Giesler. And he has a really good posting that says, hang on. Here's Tesla's advantage. And I would say, look this up. You'll find him on LinkedIn. He just wrote this. And he said, this is the classic innovators dilemma. Early integration of low-grade automation has led to introduction and solidification of organizational structures. So that means automatic emergency braking is being done by the chassis electronics people because it's braking, it's chassis. That's the way it is, all right? But ACC has been, let's get it around, hang on. ACC is being done by the chassis people, and AEB is being done by the body people. And yet some of the functions are the same. So these organizations that most of us are used to dealing with have developed that way. And when they have to go farther, they're in a difficult position. And he said the difference with Tesla is that they created it from scratch. They started with a blank sheet of paper, and they were able to go down to the individual solution on a chip level, and they pushed it into production. And he said no other OEM that would currently be close to push down this kind of technical depth from on top. So when the guy from Nikkei says we cannot do it, it's not a technical question. It's organizational. And this is why we've seen things like Volkswagen announced in November, they're bringing all their software in-house. They're going to do it all themselves. Well, we'll see what they actually do, but they're not the most flexible organization. Take it from me personally, I know. But I think this is what we're seeing, not that Tesla somehow walks on water and they're 6 years ahead of anyone else. It means organizationally they have a huge advantage because they worked differently and they built it up based around software. So I wanted to end with that and entertain a few questions. We got a few minutes. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry? Was it me? Solution on a chip. Okay.
How are these tied out?
So the fact that the traditional auto companies have got their chassis electronics and their body electronics, they've all, but it's like Conway's Law that he wrote stated back in 1968, that any piece of software, complicated system of software, will eventually come to look like the organization that created it. It's only natural that you'll have a module from the chassis guys and a module from the body guys, and therefore the redundancies and the inefficiencies are natural in that. It worked well when we had these decentralized modules that are carried over from car to car. Wonderful. But it's not that the other car companies technically can't do it. Of course they could. But organizationally, to be able to say, you can just imagine if I'm the brake guy and you're the AV guy and said, oh, geez, I don't think I should be that important anymore. Why don't you take my function and put it in yours? Makes more sense. Doesn't happen. And any human organization will resist it just because that's the way we humans function. So, yeah. Yeah.
They're talking about autonomous driving. Right now, I think we see it more as a luxury, but with the way that infrastructure is changing towards the future regulation, do you still foresee it in the future as a luxury, or will it become a necessity?
I think it all depends on where you are. Geographically, it's going to vary around the world. If we live in Singapore, it's going to be a necessity. Or Paris. I lived in Paris for 7 years, okay? Early 90s, early 2000s. I go back there now, it's all changed. I don't want to drive there anymore. I don't want to. And I drove there when a lot of Americans said, are you crazy? What are you? I was used to it. Now the congestion is so bad that when you drive up north I lived in the south suburbs, and now I could always count, okay, I'll get up at 4:30, I'll be on the road at 5, I could be at the airport by 6, and I'll make my 7:30 flight. Can't count on that anymore. There's a huge number of new hotels being built around the airport. Why? Because people who got a morning flight can't count on getting there on time. So there's like 24 new hotels being built. So you gotta say, look, honey, I'm flying out tomorrow morning. I'm gonna go stay at the hotel tonight. Traffic is just so bad. So in a place like Paris, it's one thing. What you're doing in Detroit is gonna be something else. I think it's gonna be a generational thing. The millennials most of them don't really want to own a car. My son doesn't want to drive. Yeah, okay, great, but I think it's going to be very geographic, and it's going to vary. There's not going to be one solution that fits them all.
Just as a quick follow-up,
Sure.
but do you think it's a boost for jobs?
Who's meaning what? Define your it. Autonomous driving?
Yeah.
That's I think electric vehicles in their more simple incarnation will drive down the labor that's inherent in assembling a car, where you have today this wonderfully complex powertrain transmission that requires lots and lots of hundreds of millions of people around the world to do this together. Electric motors, yeah. Nothing against electrical engineers. I'm a simple mechanical engineer. But I recognize when something's inherently simple. However, it'll come down to the amount of money it comes to run it, and then what the local jurisdiction, country, state, whatever, will enforce as far as regulations and whether they should. Okay? Other questions? Sorry to run through this. We've got a whole bunch of stuff. I've got flyers here, and if anybody's interested in the database, I have trial licenses for people who, if you wanted to try it out, take a look at it, a subscription. But we are plugged in, as you can see, to a lot of different things going on, and I'm happy to get feedback and talk to any of you who might be of interest. Yeah.
What's that thing on the radar?
Radar. Well, there's lots of new high-res radar, high resolution. I know of 2 demos at CES. One I saw myself, really impressive, because traditionally to get resolution from a radar to separate what's happening 100 meters down the way between a truck and a pedestrian, it's not easy to do. I saw one demo that a bicyclist was riding next to a car 85 meters away, and you could literally see as the bicyclist was pedaling, because the radar return was different, right? Stronger when it's vertically and less when it's like this, at 85 meters next to a big truck. So there are those that say, hey, we get high resolution radar, we don't need to do any LiDAR. I'm a simple mechanical engineer. If I can measure 3 or 4 phenomena, it's better than measuring 2 or 3 phenomena. I want redundancy in there, but I'm just a simple guy. Yeah.
Okay, this is kind of like the question I've had for the sensitive values that everybody. It's not a big deal now because there's just a few cars that have their equipped with radar and LiDAR, but does anybody address the potential
Interference?
problem?
Crosstalk.
Even radar can be a bigger problem.
Yeah.
Lot more cars that have that equipped on it.
Well, there is crosstalk is mentioned here, and I think we can expect that won't be a significant problem. Although I have the same concern, is that there's such sophistication now, at least theoretically, in broadcast signature, that you literally can filter out everything but what you signed when you sent it out and before it came back.
So they're not, everybody's kind of like moving away from the signatures or transfer profiles.
There's a lot of different, there's over 80 companies now. We're following 54 of them on our database. So, and there's a lot of people going different ways. That's for the LiDAR. There's 34 or something for the radar. High resolution, people trying to follow the Elon Musk dictate. No, LiDAR, we don't want LiDAR. He's right. But there are 85 companies that are hoping he's wrong. Okay? And there's a lot of money. We expect a lot of those to be bought out or to disappear by the time if I were to do this talk again in a year from now. But we're in such a state of flux with these different sensors that it's fascinating when I consider how far we've come from the ultrasonic world 20 years ago I was living in. It's fascinating. I don't have an answer for you. I wish I did, but the radar experts and somebody like Helmut Woodridge over at Magna. Anybody from Magna here? Okay. Helmut and I used to work together at Valio, and he's running the radar business over at Magna. He's got some real interesting stuff. So we actually, the VSI labs, we don't get down into the details of radar X versus radar Y. We see it, we look at it, and we try to see how they work together. We draw a line there, because to go too deep into the woods, that's too much for us. We're just trying to keep an eye on what the ecosystem is doing with its hundreds of players and thousands of products. But that's what our database can do. Yeah.
Do you think Mobileye is the right application to everything?
Yeah, well, I would never underestimate those guys because I've been following them since 2006. And I'm convinced their business case someday will be in a Harvard Business School case when the numbers can be released and somebody's written a book about it. Because about 1999, 2000, when they formed the company, somebody said, we need a front camera package. And we need 6 functions. Let's see, lane departure, and we need traffic sign recognition, pedestrian. They defined the 6 functions, and they put down, some of us estimate they had to put down at least $100 million right off like this. Now, what tier 1 or even an OEM would have the cojones to do that? That's what happens when you have an aggressive startup company. So come 2007, 8, they had a product, and it was really well proven out. And at Valio, we've been playing around, lane departure warning, looked at the first one on the road. Then a couple years later, I saw what Mobileye did. I said, holy crap, no, we're not, we're too far behind. And because we had other product lines that needed investment, we were unable to say, yeah, let's put a whole tens of millions of dollars into a front camera that maybe might amount to something. So this is where the advantage of a startup comes. So another, yeah?
So talk about the level of sensing members. There's a lot of work being done on camera and sensor theory.
Yeah.
So what was your experience from CES for that?
So I didn't see as much of it as I expected because I'm a mechanical guy. Packaging things are important, and I can tell you when you're shooting out LiDAR through a windscreen, through a windshield, you're going to lose energy on the way out. You're going to lose more coming back. You got all kinds of problems with that. So you got to package. If you're going to package it outside the windscreen, which is most likely, you got to clean it. Mm-hmm. You got to clean it. And you got to clean your cameras. And guess what? You should probably clean your radar things because my radar AEB goes down in a bad snowstorm pretty often. So I noticed something. Rivian, anybody from Rivian here? No, it's the other side of town. Rivian showed their prototype, and it looked like production intent. Looks like pretty. It wasn't just a concept. It was pretty sharp. Really impressive headlights, 3 dots, a vertical thing, and I was impressed with the headlights. They must have spent a fortune for them. But just underneath it, they had a Valio or EBO LiDAR. No cleaning, no provision for anything. And I pulled the guy over. I said, hey, love what you guys have done here, the front lights. You're going to have to get out and wipe this LiDAR off every 10 minutes if you want it to work. So I hope okay. So that was his reaction. I'm sure they thought of it. But for me, if someone's done a good job looking at real production applications, look at the cleaning aspects of it. because it affects packaging, it affects all kinds of things. And just now you're dragging around a whole bunch of extra liquid, how much you're gonna need it. There's some new, saw a real interesting, I forget which company, was it Valio or somebody else? Had a spinning lens. Okay, so they shoot water on it, right? But instead of doing a brush, they would spin it, and then as they spun it up to high speed, the lens was on some gear that threw all the water off it. I said, oh, that was a pretty nice thing. So I think that there's a company, Caltex, right around here in Troy, German company, and some of them are focusing on it. I think that's really important, clean. Okay, I talked too long.
Let's give a round of applause.